Hi, this is Justin Colletti of SonicScoop. Today we have a special guest on the SonicScoop podcast. This guest, Tommy Z, is a guy who's been making a living making music for major brands for decades. He's worked with brands like Nike and Adidas and Google and the Canadian Olympic team. And he comes from a background as music producer, DJ, and he really first found a way of making sustainable success, paying his mortgage, feeding his kids off of music by getting involved with brands. And this is something that comes up again and again for so many followers of this channel. I love music. I'm doing music every day. I feel like I'm getting better at it. I feel like my craft is there, but I don't see a clear path forward for how to turn this into a sustainable career. And Tommy is going to share with us one of the ways that competent musicians are turning their skills into a sustainable ongoing career, and that is making music for brands to help brands tell their stories to the world. So Tommy, thanks so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
Great, man. Thanks for having me. Excited to open some people's eyes to new possibilities for their music career.
Cool. Before we get into it, I will let you know if you want to go super deep with Tommy, he does have a full course that's just all about making music with brands. We're going to give you some of the big picture, some of the broad strokes here that'll give you an idea for how people get started, how much this kind of work pays, what it's like, what are some of the nuts and bolts here. If you want to go even deeper, there is a free training that he goes into, the 5 ways of making money with brands. And he also has, like I said, the full masterclass. And there's actually a code, Justin500, that you can enter in. He's given all the SonicScoop viewers a free discount code if you want to try out his full class. If you do try it out or the free training, let us know. Come back and hit us in the comments down below or email me at podcast@sonicscoop.com. Love to hear about your results with it. But let's get into this conversation right now about this alternate path to making money through music that I think is more structured, and I don't want to say more surefire, but it's one of these things where if you actually put in the work, there's at least a clear path to how money is made in this world. So Tommy, I'd love to hear a little bit more about how all this works with you.
Yeah, because that's what it's really about, man. It's clear path, you know. Everything else is like, yeah, what happens after I build my Instagram following? I don't know, you know, or like, I don't even know like what other methods are being taught out there now. But again, it's like even licensing or sync, it's like throwing a bunch of tracks up against a wall and maybe your track lands or it doesn't land. This is really more about you as a person, like, and just learning what you have to put into place to start receiving projects and then invoicing for them. I mean, so it's like as clear as it gets, you know, whereas everything else I find that's being taught to musicians is quite outlandish and vague and probably even ineffective, I would say, because like if you're not willing to be an artist, why would you care about having 1 million Instagram followers? I don't think that's what made a difference in Hans Zimmer's career. I'm just saying, It probably made a difference in like some new rapper's career or like, I don't know, some of these new artists that really rely on that attention and the Instagram and the TikTok. But we're talking about the kind of person who is not really interested in that. They're not interested in touring, being on stage, counting streaming royalties. They're just interested, how is there a way to turn their musical skill into a reliable income while working remotely, which is probably relevant at a time when performances are being canceled and things are kind of iffy.
And that's a good point. Not only is becoming an artist something that's a little nebulous and hard to figure out, how do I make money just as a musical artist? But it's not necessarily the right path for everyone. People who want to work on the puzzle of music every single day, but don't want to be in the spotlight, don't want to be touring. And they just want to solve the puzzle of, ooh, I have a new prompt, a new set of instrumentation that I want to be working with today to solve a particular problem, to create a certain mood. And I get these puzzles, musical puzzles presented to me to solve day after day. And there's a certain type of person who's really going to thrive in that environment. So if you are one of them, that's what we're going to be talking about all day today. All right, so let's get into some of the nuts and bolts questions. I'm going to fire a few at you, Tommy. Are you ready for them?
Yeah, man, let's do it.
Okay. So tell me a little bit, Tommy, because you've worked in different ways in music production. When did you get into this idea of making music for brands and working on that side of things?
I started as a DJ in university, and well, actually, you can go back to high school even and say I was performing as a rapper at talent shows. But appraising my rap career in high school, I thought, this is probably not what I'm going to like stake my life on. Nevertheless, there was always a desire to be involved in music in some way. And every musician will notice it's like you want to have that as a part of your story. I really, really wanted to have music as a major part of my story. And that probably comes from the fascination of like growing up in a household where my dad played really good records and they did something to me, these records. And, you know, just like you're fascinated with anything, electronics, cars, spaceships, whatever, you want to take it apart. You want to put it back together. And that's, I think, what it was with me in music, is that I wanted to also be the person programming the notes, designing the sounds, having an emotional effect on people. And so I was always looking for a way to do it. Like I said, rapping was probably not the pinnacle of my contribution to music. But, you know, it just kind of started going from there. Like in university, I started DJing at a local pub, and I found that actually curating music and playing it for people and designing DJ sets and designing these moments, unexpected moments where people would just not see a certain track coming, was a certain kind of wizardry for me that I really enjoyed, you know? So it took me places, you know, like from university, I got picked up by a few promoters who were actually visiting the campus, and they said, hey man, you should be playing in clubs. I said, sure. So I went into that and found that I could never imagine myself doing music full time as an artist. You know, there's a point at which I really wanted to do it, but I'm really good friends with reality. I'm always appraising it brutally and honestly and saying, this stuff is so sporadic. Like even though I was achieving some success with like remixes or some licenses, I was like, I just can't imagine how this could be predictable enough for me to like create a career out of it. And so as a DJ, the way I got exposed to the whole brand thing is that a friend of mine was working at an ad agency, and first he asked me to DJ at an Xbox launch event in Toronto. This was like mid-2000s or something. And after that, he said, you're dabbling in music production, right? Because I got this car commercial that I need music for, and it was a Pontiac Aztek. I don't know, Justin, if you remember the Pontiac Aztek. It's not the prettiest car in the world. Look it up, man. It's like it's probably the world's ugliest car.
Oh my goodness. This thing is brutal. It's got like two sets of eyes.
It's got a lot of rectangular. You know, it's kind of funny though, because if you look at the Tesla truck now, I don't know, maybe
they found a way to make it hip over a Tesla.
Yeah, that was my like first exposure to like what I didn't ever think about this. Like, who makes music for all of these commercials, all of these campaigns that I see on TV? I never connected those two dots. And when my friend asked me to do this, it was like my first exposure to this. And then funny enough, I was actually working a corporate career by day, and then I was DJing at night. And so I was kind of sitting on this fence going, I'd really love to be a full-time creator. Mm-hmm. I still really, really badly wanted to tell people I'm a music producer, right, full-time. But I still had to hold on to a day job. I was a banker on Bay Street in Toronto by day. And I did this campaign for Pontiac Aztek. And like 3 weeks later, I got a check in the mail. And I opened this check and I went, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I spent like maybe an evening in the studio working on this 30-second thing, mm-hmm, and maybe another half an evening in the studio doing revisions. And like, this is how much I'm getting paid. It was like 2 months of my salary at a major corporation. Mm-hmm. And I said, wow, you know, I could never really see the path clearly to making music full time because I wasn't willing to be a star on stage. I didn't want to be a DJ at 50 years old. So it's like, I try not to start things in my life that I don't see like a 10-year, at least 10-year runway for. Because it takes like about 10 years to really, I mean, it doesn't have to. It could take 3, it could take 2. But like, my philosophy is like, whatever you start, you should probably see a 10-year runway ahead, because it might take that long to make things happen. And so I saw a clear path. I'm like, there's lots of brands in this world. They're producing lots of content. They will never stop producing content. Today, that's true more so than it was when I got into business, which was 15 years ago. Because back then, we didn't have Instagram. We didn't have TikTok. We didn't have so much content being made so frequently. But even then, I was like, this is a very, very predictable path for me. Like, I'm just going to create music for brands. And so that was my connection to that world. And I never looked back since, you know. Of course, I had some ups and downs trying to break into the business. After that Pontiac Aztec commercial, I thought it was going to be easy. It wasn't that easy. Nevertheless, I did make my way in eventually. My career started in Toronto. I ended up moving to Amsterdam a few years later, becoming a creative director of one of the biggest music production companies in our industry called Massive Music. And then 5 years after that, I decided to start my own company. And here we are today, speaking about making music for brands. And I got to tell you, I think at a time like this, when things are up and down with performances, you just don't know. Are they going to get canceled? Or are they not going to get canceled? A lot of our students are actually performing musicians whose income was cut off suddenly without warning last year. And so in desperation, they were looking for a new way, and they probably came across one of our ads or one of our interviews. And they thought, hey, let me try this. And a few months later, they were being commissioned to create a song for a major brand overseas or whatever. I'm talking about real stories. I mean, I can tell you real names and real stories. But I just want to say that at a time like this, I think it's more relevant than ever to learn how to be a freelance musician who can turn their home studio into a stage. And they can make money with their musical talent wearing pajamas, not having to be in a certain metropolis, not having to be a star on stage. This is possible. This is very possible. And this is exactly what we're trying to teach. And we're also trying to benefit from the musicians that we teach, because we have some really, really talented folks that come through. And they get an opportunity to take a shot at the music production that we might be doing for any given brand at any given moment. Because unlike some internet gurus, let's say, that are trying to teach musicians, you know, how to make a living from music, we're actually doing the thing we're teaching, and we continue to do it, you know. So it's almost like we're running a restaurant, and then in the back of the restaurant, we're teaching chefs how to cook.
Yeah, I think that's a great model, and something that was more normal throughout most of human history, where a big way to learn the job was through the job and from people who are currently doing that job, and you're hopefully learning as part of a pipeline into employment. Now, there's something to be said just for learning's sake and for creating art because it's a thing you want to do in your spare time, and there's a portion of our audience who is not going to be interested in this conversation at all, because for them, music is their additional thing that they do. It's their art form that gives them release, that gives them expression outside of another job that they're totally happy with. But for people who just say, I need to make it so I get to work with this puzzle of music day in and day out, they've got to find a way to make that sustainable. And to make that sustainable, you have to figure out, where is there some type of end customer you can connect with? And you guys are one pathway there, where the end customer is brands, because you have never heard probably in your life an advertisement with no music. If that's ever been done, it's probably been done. You can count it on like one hand, you know, maybe brands that try to make a statement with an ad without music, but it's so pervasive.
Yeah, I always advocate for it in a funny way. I always tell my clients that they should buy like a Super Bowl spot and have it completely silent, because in the age of noise, you know, that would be the thing that would draw the most attention, because I feel we're oversaturated with it. But you're absolutely right. You touched on two things. One is being learning by doing. I'm a big fan of this, okay? I don't personally like just taking courses online for the sake of learning something I can't actually apply. Like, I'm very serious about how I invest my time, and I love learning, and I do spend a lot of money on online education, but I am not a fan of the kind of course which I finish and I'm just like, I'm not exactly sure if I'm ahead or not. So our academy is structured in a very hands-on way where you literally just move through a 7-stage journey that takes you all the way from like psychological and even practical preparation. Like, these are the things you need to have in place before we launch, to literally saying, okay, let's walk through a number of real life examples that we've done. Here's a basic car commercial. Let's take a look at what the email looked like when the job originated. Let's take a look at the back and forth discussion about the music before we even started making music. And let's take a look at the DAW. Let's take a look at the session, how the music actually came about. And now you do it. Now you, as homework, do this car commercial, send it in to us, and a real producer is going to look at it and go, look, your sounds are great, but you need to develop your composition more. You didn't acknowledge a certain key moment in the commercial. That's what the director, agency, and the client really wanted to emphasize. When the guy presses that button, we need to make that a magic moment. You didn't acknowledge that. So, you know, we're sometimes a little bit of tough love to people, but, you know, it's like, if you really want to learn, I think people don't mind being told brutally, honestly, like, hey, here's what you need to work on, as long as it comes from a good place.
I've noticed that the people who are the most serious about it tend to ask for that. I do coaching calls as, you know, part of my business, often doing mix coaching for people. And some of the most successful students are always the ones who are saying, don't be nice, like be brutal, tell me everything that's wrong. That's what they want to hear. They want to be picked apart. And I think that is a good attitude to develop when you don't take that kind of feedback as a personal attack on you, but as, hey, I want you to find the chinks in my armor so I can cover them up. And it's a really healthy attitude to go in with. And I'm sure you guys are able to do it diplomatically enough to not scare off all of your students, but giving them the honest feedback of like, hey, here's what's an actual real world director's going to say to you, or even worse, not say to you because they're just passing without giving you the real reason why.
That's right. That's the worst. Mm-hmm. That's the ultimate kind of bad, if you don't get a reply whatsoever. And that happens a lot, even to us as a music production company. Yeah. You know, this is why I believe there is value in having industry insiders as your mentors, people like yourselves. I just
hey man, it's the royal we. I'm totally fine with that.
That's right. But no, there's tremendous value in that, because you can, realize what's happening. If you're able to actually, like you said, and we teach this in our masterclass, we actually teach the difference between an artist and an artisan. Mm. So an artist is somebody who, a lot of artists have big egos, and they probably should. I don't know that you can get anywhere without a big ego.
How are you going to be an artist if you don't have at least a little bit of ego or narcissism to say, why not me? Why shouldn't it be me?
You gotta, you gotta be a bit weird. You gotta be a bit convinced of your own delusion, mm-hmm. even sometimes. And that's what makes you attractive to other humans who buy into your mythology, whether you're Lady Gaga or whatever world you create. Because if you notice, the most successful artists have a certain world around them. And you always see that. There's a certain imagery, a certain font, a certain live performance, a certain world, basically, a world that gives you a certain feeling and that you want to be a part of that world. But as a craftsperson, as an artisan, that's a completely different mindset, because here you're getting paid to solve a creative problem. So it's not necessarily about your world, about your vision. It's really about your technical skill. We get some hate sometimes under our ads when people are like, oh, you're ruining music. You're trying to get musicians to do brands. That's the worst thing that you could do with music. And I'm like, guys, you don't understand. I don't like brands per se either. I'm not do you think I'm some kind of a true believer into big brands? I don't give a shit. This is just a way for me to sustain myself as a creator. The smartest, most pragmatic way for me to sustain myself as a creator is to accept commissions from the places that have the money and have the need to create content, and they have the money to commission craftspeople like me, and film directors and editors and photographers and colorists and special effects people, we are all working, accepting commissions for brands because that's where the action is. That's where the action is happening.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to step back, and I'm sorry to walk over you here for a second, but I'm going to make this sound more warm and fuzzy. I do love the the cold and calculated way in which you've painted this, because it is, for honestly many people, a wise decision to say, who's able to pay? Because that's where I'm going to make money. I'm not going to make money from people who aren't able to pay. But there are choices that you have. And the funny thing about brands that people will immediately have this instinctive reaction to say, oh, we're getting involved in this gauche commercialism. But everyone has brands that they absolutely love. And I think that's something we forget about. Right now, I'm drinking a glass of water. This isn't any water. This is Gerolsteiner. This is the finest water. It's a $2 bottle of water. This is the finest water you'll find. It comes out of Germany. It has as much calcium practically as a glass of milk. And I love this stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. It's the highest mineral content of any water out there. See, I actually like the brand, and I actually know a little bit about their story. There's things that I own and I like. This microphone in front of me, a Jay-Z microphone. I actually genuinely like the microphone. I do jujitsu as a hobby. I have preferred brands of gi that I wear that, like, I actually like the brand and what they focus on in their craft. We all have brands that we love, and we were able to fall in love with those brands because we found out about them. And ultimately, what you're doing when you're helping people market is you're helping a brand tell its story. Now, hopefully more often than not, you're aligning with brands where you're like, hey, that's a cool product, and I'm glad that people are going to find out about it. That said, is every job that way? I'm guessing probably not. But here's the one caveat I want to offer to people who have been working with artists primarily. When you're working with an artist, you don't love the music of every single artist that you work with. Hopefully, predominantly, you're working with artists who are like, that's cool, I hope people hear this record. But some of them who are able to pay you, you may not love the project. Is that any better or worse than being in the same situation with brands where hopefully predominantly you're working with brands where you're excited that you're helping tell their story? So that's one caveat I want to make it sound potentially warmer and fuzzier than you have painted it. But I also appreciate the bluntness of, like, we want to find a way to make a living doing this, and this is a clear path forward that has repeatable steps that we can do again and again and make this a daily puzzle we keep coming back to.
Well, let me tell you my definition of a sellout,
Sure.
because sometimes people say this as making music for brands is being a sellout. And I would go a step further and to say that my definition of a sellout is somebody who is basically ignoring their call to be a musician for whatever reason. And if I can get paid to do a toilet paper commercial, but I get to go into my studio and still learn, spend time here, make sounds, be sitting in front of monitors or wearing my headphones, and still be trying to answer a creative problem without having to go drive a forklift, not that there's anything wrong with that, be behind a cash register, not that there's anything wrong with that, or sit in a cubicle, corporate cubicle like I did, not that there's anything wrong with that. But my choice was, I just want to be in the studio as much as possible. And whatever will allow me to do that, I'm going to explore that opportunity. And for me, the trade-off of writing a piece of music for a toilet paper commercial, which we do from time to time, is still, when I speak to other composers and other music producers in the business, even after the worst job, we always say, hey, we are still fortunate. It's not as if we're putting on a helmet with a little flashlight on top, descending into a coal mine, risking our lives, digging into the ground. We're just creating music. So let's not take ourselves too seriously. But still, I think for anybody who really, really commits to being a full-time musician, this is just one more avenue that you may not have considered, that nobody told you about, that we're telling you about. It's not about sync. It's not about music placement, because that is about a song. That is about a song being at the right place at the right time in front of the right music supervisor who listens to 1,000 of them. This is different. This is not about a song. This is about you. This is about you as a craftsperson. This is about you as a unique creator who develops connections inside of the industry with people who are involved in the production of big brand campaigns to a point where you become the product. You become somebody that they just want to work with over and over and over again because they know you're reliable. They know the music you make is going to move human beings. And you know, that's the name of the game here. And I wanted to just spell that out because a lot of people are like, oh, making music for brands. Oh, that's sync. Oh, that's placement. No, it's not. It's you as a musical craftsperson who develops relationship, develops their reel, develops their reputation to a point where you're basically getting an email every single day, hopefully, maybe twice a day, maybe 3 times a day, like some of the composers in our business saying, can you write a demo for Nike? Can you write a demo for Heineken? Can you write a demo for Ford? And you're basically sitting there in your pajamas writing music for these brands. There's different kinds of musicians in our business. Some are full-time composers. That's all they do, advertising. And some people might say, that's a pretty terrible existence, to be honest. Like, I don't want to just leave a legacy of commercials. Fine. We have people who are songwriters, artists with an active record deal, who are touring, who are putting out records. But they always tell me, you know what? It doesn't generate that much money. I'm doing it because I need to create art. I need to create the kind of music that I want to make. So I do that. But in order to make the money, I come over to the commercial side once in a while, accept a few briefs, do commercials maybe 6 months out of the year, and then take some time off in the forest to create my EP, to create my art. So you can do that. You know, there's a place for every kind of profile in our business. And we actually want to have real songwriters, real artists writing songs for commercials because a lot of brands are culturally sensitive. Like, they want to be the purveyors of fine music. You think Apple wants to like use some generic stock music in there? No, their whole vibe is about like introducing you to something that you may not even be aware of. And every great brand is about that. They're about being curators and creators of stuff you may have never heard of. That's what gives them cultural cachet with the kids in the street, quote unquote, right? So there's room for like, you know, artists at the highest levels of the game as far as songwriting. And I mean, I work with people who won't put their name on a commercial because they don't want their artistic name associated with brands, but they will write a song. They'll put their voice on it. They just don't want to put their artistic name on it, but they'll be commissioned. They'll write an invoice. They'll write a song. They'll be like, sure, I don't mind making money. Just don't put my name on it, but I don't mind making money and selling my musical skill as a way of, you know, feeding my family.
Well, interesting. So, I mean, you do have 2 choices, and one is probably you're ultimately going to most likely work with brands either way, whether you're working in a corporate job or you're working construction for a particular company, whatever it is, you're likely working for a brand in some way. And are you doing that in a way with music where you're using your music to help that brand tell its story and get its message across and get in front of potential people who ideally will love their product or service? Or are you working with a brand in some other way and keeping music pure and just for you and just an expressive art form? And I think both of those answers are valid. There are people who are happy to make their living doing what they do, and music is just a release or escape from them. And there are those people, though, who become addicted to the musical process where the only thing that makes sense is to do it day after day. And I think that's one thing you're offering a potential path for. Now, just so we can understand how the business works a little bit better, how do people go about getting their first gigs? And is this something where you're often recording a whole bunch of different pieces and then trying to place the right ones to the right brands? Or is it more often work that's done is specifically in reaction to a particular prompt?
Yeah. So in order to understand how to break into the business, you have to understand how the business works, basically how the music is made. So let me give you a quick rundown of the process of how commercial music that you see on a Super Bowl commercial, let's say, how it was made, the people involved, and that will give you a clue as to who you need to get in touch with. The second part of your question was about, is this kind of like you write something from scratch, or do you write a bunch of stuff and then try to like place it on the right thing? Let me dispel that first, because there's a lot of misconception about music for ads, which is that music for ads comes from music libraries, and that's simply not true. It could be that there are small campaigns for small brands which source their music from music libraries, and I don't even know what they are, and that shows you. I'm literally paying my mortgage, feeding my family for the last 15 years, creating music for ads, and I don't even know what music libraries are out there. And so what I'm saying is, if this was a relevant part of making music for big brands, I would probably know what the big music libraries are and point musicians to them. But we don't, because big brands do not search for their music in music libraries. What do they do? What music brands do, and I'm just going to paint a big picture for you. You have a big brand, let's say Red Bull. Red Bull needs to conceive of a creative advertising campaign for the next quarter in order to basically tell their story and make people fall in love with them and cause a bunch of emotions in our brain that will make us go, I prefer Red Bull over this no-name energy drink, which Red Bull does very well, by the way. So Red Bull does not actually conceive of the creative idea for their campaign. What they will do is look for an advertising agency that is going to be what's called their agency of record, that they will sign to some kind of contract, maybe a year, maybe 2, maybe 3, depending on how the relationship goes. And it's the ad agency that will think of the next TV campaign for Nike, for Red Bull, for Booking.com, wherever it is. Every brand has an advertising agency. The only job of the ad agency is to think of the funny commercial for a Super Bowl, or the outrageous commercial, or the tagline, whatever it is. The ad agency basically thinks of the concept. But the ad agency doesn't shoot the commercial. They don't shoot the Super Bowl commercial you're going to watch. They need production partners in order to actually bring this idea to life. So they will hire a film production company. A film production company is actually going to bring on the film director. Could be even a big name director, somebody that did movies that you know. They could be producing a commercial for Squarespace or for Michelin or for BMW. And so they will shoot the commercial. Next in line is editing. So the ad agency will choose an editor that they want to work with in order to edit the commercial. And almost last in line, because last in line is the colorist and somebody who finalizes the picture for broadcast. But almost last in line is the music production company. So the agency will find a music production company, they'll probably select one that they're used to working with to create original music for this particular campaign. They might even invite 3 different music production companies that they like in order to pitch for a chance to create music for this campaign. So what does that look like? Basically what it looks like on my end, because I'm one of these music production companies, is I log into my email every morning, and one of these mornings I see, hey Tommy, hope you've been well. We have this campaign that we're doing for, let's say, Salvation Army, because that's something we just recently finished. And we'd really love to work with you on this. This is the timing. This is the approximate budget. Are you willing to do this? And of course, more often than not, I say, yes, let's do this. And then I take a look at the brief. Usually they have some kind of a rough edit. A rough edit is like a rough version of the commercial that's eventually going to air. It's not fully finished yet, but it's enough for us to get the idea of what we want to do musically. And normally they will have some kind of a music reference that they've been talking about, some kind of a song that they like that they feel will work for this. So then my job as a music producer, or the job of any music producer at any music production company that specializes in this, is to find the right musicians in order to submit demos for this particular campaign. So think of me as kind of like a chef, and think of the freelance musicians all over the world out there as cooks. And there are literally like hundreds of freelance musicians who, that's all they do, is they sit in their pajamas, they accept these briefs and they write for them. And so I look at the brief and I go, who's right for this? Okay, I'm going to reach out to Justin, I'm going to reach out to Matteo, and I'm going to reach out to Lucky. because these three guys have that indie guitar sound. They have an interesting vocal. That's what this brief calls for. So this is what I do. I email the freelance composer, which could be you. You get an email in your inbox saying, hey, we're pitching for this campaign for Salvation Army. Please don't talk about it. Maybe you have to sign an NDA. I have $300 for you to write a 30-second demo. And if your demo wins, you're going to get, let's say, $3,000. This campaign is going to air for 3 months on TV in Canada only. These are not real figures, but I'm just giving you examples. So then the composer, freelance composer, goes away and they go, yes, I can do this. I'm going to submit a demo. We agree on when they submit demos. So let's say my deadline is 5 days. I'll ask them to write a demo in 2 days. So I can review it, maybe give them some comments. They do some revisions, blah, blah, blah. So I received 3 different demos from 3 different composers. And maybe I have some comments. Sure, let's revise demo 1. Demo 2 is fine as it is. Let's leave it. Demo 3, don't really like it. Not crazy about it. Okay, so we have 2 demos now. I'm going to submit those 2 demos to the agency with my comments. Normally I submit more. So actually for Salvation Army, I think we submitted like 5 demos or so. And that's essentially the process. The agency will listen to the demos. And just like it was in our case, in reality, they said, you know what, guys, amazing music. Really love it, but none of it works for us. And the reason why is because everything changed on our end. We want everything to be faster, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so we do round 2. So I start commissioning new composers or sticking with the same ones. And they go again and write some demos. And then eventually the agency chooses one of the demos. We revise it. We finalize it. Everything is finished as far as music. The freelance composer, a musician or songwriter writes me an invoice for the final fee. And those who didn't make it, whose song wasn't selected, they write me an invoice for a demo fee. And that's basically how the business works. So here I am answering your question in a very long way. But the bottom line is, if you want to break into this business, what you need to do is find music producers like me at music production companies that specialize in creating music for brands from scratch. These are not music libraries. There's like over 300 or 400 music production companies that solely exist for the purpose of writing music for commercials. We know this because we keep a running directory in our academy. So we know. The way you can find these music production companies is you go to something like a website like adsoftheworld.com, or you go to Cannes Gold Lions, which is a huge prestigious advertising festival where they give out awards for the best ads of the year. And you look at the winners and you look at, okay, who was the film director that shot this commercial? Who was the editor? Who was the colorist? Who was the music production company? Who was the music producer? And you take note, and that's who you reach out to. But it's not that easy, folks. I don't want you to just, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm going to reach out to them now. There's a way to approach these folks. You need to have a reel. You need to have a website. You need to compose yourself accordingly in order to make a good first impression. But essentially, to make the long story short, that's how you would go about creating connections in the business and hopefully receiving your opportunities if you do indeed make an impression on a producer and they give you a chance.
Interesting. So it sounds like your personal role to these days, you're still a DJ in a sense almost. You're a kind of curator where you're hiring in a lot of different musicians and kind of directing them. And you might have a few different people who work for you as freelancers who are almost competing a little bit against each other to figure out whose piece is going to be the one that finally gets picked. And even those who don't get selected are still getting paid a fee to say, hey, you put in the work. Thanks for being there for us. We want you to be there again next time. Your tune didn't get picked, but here's a fee to make it worth your time. And then I would imagine if the cue that they wrote was really good, but it just wasn't right for that piece. Is it something that they're able to reuse at different times, or how does that aspect of things work?
So it is indeed something that goes into an archive, and normally it goes into an archive of the music production company that paid you a demo fee. And some music production companies are more stringent and a little bit tight with this, where they will say to you, well, we paid you $300 for the demo, so now it's ours, so we're going to shop it. And so hopefully in that case, they will be adamant about shopping it. So there's no doubt about it because they want to keep it in their archive, and they want to pitch it to every campaign where that demo might be a great candidate. And there is a good chance that eventually they will sell it. And then there are some music production companies where you have a very casual relationship. A music production company like mine, for instance, where if one of my composers, who I paid a demo fee to, calls me a year from now and they go, you know that demo I did for Heineken? I have a great home for it. Somebody wants to get it. Is it okay if I license it to them? And I go, sure, man, go ahead. You know, that's just the way I work. And some other music production companies will work that way. It really comes down to the relationship you have with the music producer at every music production company. I know some of the top composers in our business. When I ask them for what we call pulls, okay, and this is a technical term in our business, a pull, quote unquote, is something that I will ask you to do when I don't have a budget for a demo fee for you to go and create something from scratch for me. But I'm like, Justin, I have this thing, man. It's a Reebok campaign. Do you have anything like Dua Lipa? Need a 30-second track. Dua Lipa, big hook, blah, 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 whatever, big guitar riffs. And you're like, yeah, let me look through my catalog. That's called a pull. And then you might actually find a bunch of demos you've done for different people in the past that reflect that kind of vibe, and then you send them to me. So I have top composers sending me stuff, and I see in the name like Samsung or like, I don't know, some insurance company, some huge insurance medical company from the States. And they're sending it to me. So I'm assuming they basically are okay to pitch that demo. They have an agreement with whoever they originally wrote that demo for to send it to me. And sometimes that's the easiest money, man, because you honestly like spend like 10 minutes going through your archive, creating a link for me to, you know, and then I'm like, yeah, I sold it. I've had like a few campaigns this year where we've sold music to Adidas in Japan. And it wasn't a huge budget, but it was like, you know, $1,000, $1,500 for something that was just sitting on your hard drive, and something that wasn't like a huge TV campaign. It was like an Instagram post for Adidas or something. And they wanted an original track. And you know, so that's something that happens more and more in our business also, this concept of pulls and searching for demos you might have done before.
Now, to give people some perspective, what are the kinds of numbers, just broad, big picture, like a low and a high number for what demo fees could look like at different agencies and what some of the top paying gigs could look like? What's the range of expectations people should have, just so they get a sense for how many of these jobs should they be taking on in a year to do things like pay their mortgage and feed their family off of making music with brands?
Yeah, so I'll tell you the model that we use in our masterclass. When I say model, I mean a real composer, and what their numbers look like, because I believe that you should always kind of model yourself after someone very specific, and then just model your actions based on what they're doing. So one of the top composers who I often work with, and who actually is in our masterclass, we do an interview with him and everything. He makes, I think, 70,000. He made, like at the time of the interview, 70,000 from demo fees alone, which means those are projects that didn't even make it. 70,000 US. And then he said he wins 1 out of 5 or so. So we have 2 fees. We have the demo fee, which pretty much stays the same no matter who you are. It ranges between $250 and $500, but most people will make $250 most of the time. So that's always the same. What will differ is the second fee. If your music actually makes it, that fee, called final fee, will differ. And it will differ because sometimes a campaign is run for 2 months and it's only social media in this particular country, so the fee will be less. Sometimes it's a worldwide campaign, all media, which means your spot is going to be on TV. It's going to be on the internet. It's going to be everywhere for a year globally. That should be big money. But it's not always big money, but it should be big money, right? So the final fee will always range, and we say the final fee will range anywhere from like $1,000 to, I've had some of my students make like 10 grand up on their first campaign, which startled even me, because I'm like, how the hell did you get 10 grand as a final fee? Like, I don't even pay my composers that much, but it happens, and it really depends on who you're working with. And here's the thing that I will say, because a lot of people ask me before they even enroll, like, what's going to be my return on investment and what? And it's like, guys, that's not the way it works. Like, I mean, we're not selling Dyson vacuum cleaners with like it is a numbers game in a sense that the more people you reach out to, the better your reel is, the more connections you make, the higher your chance of getting your first gig. But don't look at it that way. Look at it as you're going to go out there, create a bunch of relationships. And if you're a really good craftsperson and you're reliable and you come through every single time for a producer like me, then I'm like, it makes sense to keep reaching out to that person every time I have a creative challenge on my desk. And so, yeah, it's like people worry about how quickly will I get a return on my investment. Don't think that way. Just go out there, create connections in the business, and the money is just going to follow. And how much money it's going to be, even the top composers don't know how much they're going to make. They have no idea, right? But it's like, don't look at that. Look at the mechanics of your daily actions and what you need to do in order for the money to follow. I much prefer this mindset because, like I said, there's this guy, Lewis, who is in our masterclass. His live gigs were his 100% income. Live gigs, 100% income. He never realized there's a way to like sit in his basement studio and be commissioned. So he literally had people like donate. Like, there's this fund going around in his small town. He lives in Illinois. He didn't have money to enroll in the masterclass. There was this small fund that basically supported whoever was hit hardest by the lockdown last year. And so he decided to spend money from this fund to enter our masterclass, which always makes me feel like, oh my goodness. You know what I mean? It kind of makes me feel a bit nervous that people literally invest like their last dollar or whatever into the masterclass. But he was serious, man. He was serious. He finished the masterclass like in probably a month and a half, whereas most people will take like 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, because it's quite meaty. And then he went out there, he started making connections, blah, blah, blah. And he was struggling. Like he wrote me, he's like, hey man, I'm putting in the work. I've sent emails to all these music houses and I've demoed on Coke and I've demoed on all these big things, but I'm not getting a final. And man, I remember this email that I got from him. He was kind of discouraged. And then like a month later, he sends me an email. He's like, hey man, I wrote a track for a French public transportation company. And the track basically paid for an entire year worth of rent. And I was just like, whoa, man. I was so damn happy for this guy. You know, it's like, don't expect that. That's not a common result. But I was especially happy for him because he did put in the work. And so if anybody was going to be a success story for our masterclass, I was hoping it would be him. Like what happens to someone who spends their last money, actually is diligent, does the work, really works hard to get the opportunity. I'm like, if he doesn't get a break from the universe, I'm going to be a bit bummed about it, you know? But I'm glad he did. But it shows you, like, you can't plan this crap. Like, how would you, I would never, ever set an expectation with him that he would land a gig that would pay a year worth of his rent. Those things can happen if you apply yourself. But again, you don't know. All you can do is go out there, build the relationships, be reliable, be responsive, be somebody that just delivers musical magic, man. Every time you get a brief, and you will get producers calling on you. And one brief will pay you $2,000, one will pay you $5,000, one might be a favor where they're like, hey man, all I got is $500. It doesn't matter. It's not about the project, it's about the people. The people, if you have a tight relationship with them, and then you count all the projects you've done with them over a decade, the numbers become staggering. Like if I look at all my key relationships.
And it's interesting,
crazy.
you know, you make a good point about just getting out there with the diligence because there's a skill component to it and there's a luck component to it. But the more you keep doing it again and again, the more opportunities for luck you're going to have. It's interesting. I was kind of doing some math as you were talking about this stuff. Is it realistic to say, hey, we're doing mostly 30-second spots. I'm sure that's the majority of the work, 30-second spots. And we're getting paid, let's say, a demo fee, roughly $250 for each one. Is it realistic that if you become in demand and form good relationships with multiple music houses, that you could be doing 4 30-second spots a week at $250 each and finding your way to a middle-class income that way? And then hopefully by getting a bunch of them placed, you're getting into kind of upper middle class and beyond income that way. Is that realistic? And would people be working predominantly just with one producer, just with one publishing house, or will they often have different relationships with multiples of them to make sure they have work coming in?
I would say that the name of the game would be like the model that I mentioned. He's working with over 30 music production companies. So there's a good chance that if you're working with 30 music production companies and the month consists of 30 days, on any given day, you're probably going to get a call from one of these music production companies. That's the best way to do it. The reality of your start will probably look more like nobody answered you, but as we teach in the masterclass, the entire art consists of polite but persistent follow-up. You got to mean it. Most musicians, even the ones who actually manage to make a success of themselves in this business, it's funny how they say, well, you know, I kind of got in by accident, and actually when I sent out emails, nobody got back to me, so I thought my music sucked. When in fact, their music never sucked. It never sucked. They just made an assumption in their head that because someone's not getting back to them, they're not cut out for it. So follow up, create as many connections as you can. And the reality of your start will probably be that somebody out there will maybe have space in their day. They're not going to be pulling their hairs out at this particular moment because our business is very fast and furious. You know, the deadlines are pretty crazy. This is why they're not answering your email a lot of the times. But let's say they have space in their day and they just decided to, like, your email is short. Okay. We teach the anatomy of a good email in our masterclass also, because the first mistake people make is like they want to spill their whole biography out on paper.
I get a lot of those.
It's like, oh, I need to get that out. I need them to know who I am. No, you don't.
In a journal.
Did you tell your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your wife your whole damn story on your first like freaking encounter?
Some people do and wonder why they're not having success.
It's the same. It's not about you, man. It's like, so we try to maximize the chances of you actually getting your foot in the door. So short, concise email with a link to a website that, again, is crisp, compelling, and clear, very clear. So I don't have to do a lot of thinking. I just find myself clicking, because like when we're processing emails, a lot of times we're almost hypnotized, right? So you kind of want to play into that hypnosis and not give anyone too much time to read or think about things. Just, oh, I see a link, I click it. I see a link, I click it. Hopefully your reel is very targeted. So you've made some really good selections on the kind of music that you decide to showcase on first listen to people like me. And your start is probably going to be someone in the business giving you a shot, basically, saying, look, man, I have my budget allocated already. I have my 5 go-to guys. If you want, I mean, I'm working on a Nike commercial. Take a shot at it, but I'm not going to pay you a demo fee. That's most likely what your first interaction with the producer is going to look like. And that's beautiful. That's your door opening. If you deliver something remarkable, something unexpected, something on brief, but still making me go, holy shit, this is more than what I asked for. It's not only right, it's right. It's like right squared. It's like magic. It's like, wow. Even if your music doesn't make it, I always say to people, that doesn't matter. You're thinking, don't think like a sprint, think like a marathon. Your only goal is to just make yourself known to this person as someone who's going to be reliable, responsive, and revolutionary with the kind of work that you're doing. Even if your stuff doesn't make it, I will not forget. I'll be like, holy shit, that thing they sent for a Reebok campaign, whew, like I want that guy to pitch every time I do something. Because why? Because he makes me look good, or she makes me look good as a producer. They're like, where are you getting this talent from? And it's like, hey, there's a lot of talented musicians out there. And some of them just discover that they're like made for this world of briefs, of having a picture, of like writing to a certain moving visual. So yeah, I kind of get off on that. Like people who have musical skill, but they have no idea about our world. And then they suddenly find themselves in our world. They're like, oh my God, I'm meant for this. Like, I don't want to be on stage. I didn't really know what the hell to do next. Like, what am I going to do? Like, keep counting Spotify royalties? Like, what do I do, man? I have this studio. I have musical talent, but like, what do I do with this, right? And so I love seeing that when people find their niche and they're like, okay, I found it. Like, now I know what to do. And they're willing to work hard. Like most musicians' problem is not that they're not willing to work hard. It's just they don't have any direction. It's kind of a weird time right now. Like everyone's saying NFTs, NFTs. Sure, NFTs.
Can you elaborate,
but like
please?
right now, NFTs to pay the rent? Yeah, can you elaborate, please? Like I'm all about it, guys. Crypto, NFTs, decentralized, all about it, guys. But how am I going to feed my kid tomorrow? NFTs work if you're already huge because you have attention. But if you're not already huge, NFTs is as meaningful to you as I'm going to put out a single and it will generate millions in revenue. So what about this person that doesn't want to be on a stinking tour bus? They can't feed their family with Spotify royalties. NFTs, yeah, sure, dabble, experiment, learn about it, but like concretely, what do you do? And this is what I'm saying. Stop treating your music as a product that you sell to people who are already getting this product for free, and start treating your musical skills as a service that you will pitch to places that have the money and are willing to pay for it. Where's the money? Where's the action? Brands, guys. Brands. I mean, brands have all the money. They're hiring the film director, the artist, the dancer, the editor, the colorist, the makeup artist. That's who's hiring craftspeople. You know, it used to be like churches and kings that used to pay artists, and 500 years ago to create a song or whatever, they used to commission Bach to create, write me a suite of music that will make me fall asleep. That's how the Brandenburg Concerto came about, right? Well, that's not who the patrons are anymore. The patrons of artists today are brands.
That's a little bit better, because say what you will about brands, but you can pick another brand, but you couldn't pick another king. So
yeah, that's correct. That's correct. And that's an important point, Justin, also, that you can choose. So I'm going to go back to the guy who's killing it in our business. He's one of the busiest composers. He will not do, and I'm not going to mention names, he will not do certain political parties. Just won't. He will not do energy companies like petroleum. Just won't. Then I have other people who, I mean, let's take an example of Feist, who got paid by Apple. I don't know how much she got paid by Apple in the mid-2000s. It was a very inspiring case study to us at the time because she came from Toronto, was part of this small indie label. Suddenly she ends up in a commercial with the 1, 2, 3, 4 track. And then who comes along? McDonald's. They're like, hey, Feist, here's $1 million. Can we have your song for McDonald's commercials? Yeah. He's like, nope. Won't do it. So you have choice. And I will say this. The more you work to create a remarkable craftsperson out of yourself, the more magic you create, the more leverage you have to pick. Because people will want your music, your magic so badly. And you can be the one saying, hey, you know what? I do everything. You want a political campaign? Sure. There are musicians like that. They're very pragmatic. They're like, get it while the going's hot. But just know that you do, just because I say brands doesn't mean that you have to do Apple if you disagree with how Apple creates their laptops. You don't have to do cars if you feel cars are destroying the world. You just don't. But you're going to have to be really damn good in order for anyone to even care, first of all. Right? Yeah. Like I say this because I have some students who come to me and they're like, yeah, so I have this project on the table and I really want to tie up the contract here. I want to make sure they don't use this song past the 30 days. And I really want to lock it down and I want to get the most money. And I'm like, you're thinking of a sprint instead of thinking about your career as a marathon. Your first and foremost concern should be, am I even making good music? Like most people worry about the wrong shit. It's like, I listened to the track that was in question. I'm like, I would have absolutely no worries about this track getting stolen. To be brutally honest with you, it's just not that special. It is
tricky. There is, we're all born feeling a little entitled, right? Because when we're born, we are entitled, right? We're entitled to mother's milk and we're entitled to, this and that. But as we get older, we really start to realize that it is about bring value to other people's lives. And what can I do to bring them enough value. So they start to rely on me, and now they don't want me to go away, and they'll do whatever they can to keep me bringing that value. And that is a tricky shift to make for some people. And for some people, it happens later than for others. But I think you'll find a kernel of that at the beginning of every success story is going in and saying, I'm no longer entitled to the job just because I like doing music. It's about who am I connecting with? How am I providing them value? How am I making their lives better? Ultimately, ideally, the brands are doing the same thing. If they are working in a kind of free way, the idea is the only reason they're going to buy our product is because they think it's making our life better. And that's what the brand has to do to the end customer. And that's what the ad agency has to do for the brand. And that's what the music producer or the music house has to do for the ad agency. And that's what the freelancer has to do for the music house. And nowhere in that
And
is there
ultimately, it's
room
what makes the
for
world go round.
entitlement. It's about how can I deliver value for these people and then get back what I deserve based on having given that value that I've demonstrated to them. So,
And I would say something maybe even like borderline controversial, and maybe I'm just thinking out loud, but maybe songs are not so special anymore. I'm just putting it out there as an art form. Like
it's hard to say and hard to hear, but I will give you this, that there is today not a shortage of really good recorded music. And I have, as a mastering engineer, worked on so many songs that I think are actually really well done and actually done something to me physically. Like I get goosebumps listening to them. They're beautifully produced. There's a beautiful turn of phrase in there, but they don't necessarily find an audience because you can't just have the song. There has to be more than just a song, even if you want to succeed as an artist, because the artists who succeed are selling more than just a song. They're often selling a story. They're selling an aesthetic. They're selling membership to a tribe or a movement or a community. So there's a song on its own. As much as we love songs because we're into music, it's kind of not enough by itself. So I'll halfway agree with that songs matter, but they're not enough.
But in our case, like in the case where you basically have to make a song come alive from nothing for a specific brief, and I would say that it's not even about the song, it's about the maker, the song creator. So that's where the cachet is. So on the artistic side, it's like you said, you have to build more than just a song. You have to build a world, an image, you have to build a certain story. But in our business, where it's not always about the artist, we just need a song that fits the commercial and it, hopefully is giving people goosebumps. It's about being a great craftsperson. So it's about building the kind of cachet that makes people
Some of
reach
the
out
things,
to
in
you.
addition to this guy can turn around great music, when he sends me an email, they're short and to the point. He responds quickly. He's pleasant to work with. He understands he gives me the benefit of the doubt and isn't assuming I'm just trying to get one over on him in every interaction.
That's exactly it. So do you see where the center of gravity is? It's not in your songs. It's in your approach to craft. It's how you are as a creator. Because in our business, that's what will make a difference. And that's what will have your email full of briefs. And who knows, maybe an artistic career gets started out of you writing music for commercials. And a great example of this is somebody like Sean Christopher, who is a guy I still work with today. He's done some of the best work on my reel. He's signed to a label. He's living the life as an artist. But few people know that some of the first songs that actually made his first album, which nobody was waiting for, which he pitched to a bunch of labels and eventually ended up getting signed to Dumont, which is a Swedish label with some really cool artists on it. They all started as advertising songs. But that just shows you, his artistic career got started because he was a really good craftsperson. And so a lot of times it's the other way around, where it's like you started as an artist and then you made your way into advertising. But with Sean, it was the other way around. He started writing songs for ads, and some of them were so damn good that they ended up being extended into full-length songs and being good enough that he got a record deal out of them. So, there's opportunities like this. But it all comes down to like who you are, your sensibility. I just find no matter if you're an artist or you're full-time into writing music for ads, whatever, the people who succeed, I find there's a different frequency about them. They're more responsive, they're more reliable, they're more focused. They're just on point, versus other kind of musician who's scattered, who maybe feels entitled, who's like, oh, I didn't get your email. Is it still on? It's like, no, we work with really tight deadlines here. This train has passed, So taking time to develop that, I feel, is always a good investment. Just becoming a person of substance. No matter what it is that you do, whether you're an artist or a craftsperson, hang around people who are raising the bar, basically, who you feel kind of stupid around, who you feel kind of incompetent around. Honestly, that's what I try to do. Like, I don't want to be the smartest guy in the room. I want to always up my game. I want to be sharper and sharper, and so I think you can never go wrong doing that. And then there will always be opportunities for you, always, because you're somebody who shows up and delivers.
Fair enough. And I like this idea too about the music for brands not only being something you can do where you've developed a craft and you are now finding another way to utilize it and make a sustainable income, but being a place where you can also develop your craft and get better. Because the only real way to get like mind-bendingly good skills at music production is to do it again and again and again and again. And having that opportunity potentially to have prompts to always keep you busy with a new musical project in a new genre, with a new set of instrumentation. It's the kinds of things that people pay tens of thousands of dollars for to go to college and get these prompts, where it's like, hey, you can get these prompts and potentially get paid for realizing them. So I think we've made a good case for what this stuff is all about. And by now, anyone who's gotten this far into the conversation probably has at least some passing interest in potentially getting deeper into this stuff. So I would love to direct you, if you guys want to learn more. Tommy has a masterclass over at the Anthemacademy. And not only is there the full masterclass that is training that could stretch out over months with personalized feedback from producers who are in this business, you get to see from the inside how people in this business actually work, what their productions look like, what the business end of it looks like. There's also a free primer that Tommy has, and we'll link to both of these things.
So in the free training, and like you said, it's a primer for people to figure out. That free training will be enough for you to know more than the average musician about our industry. And it's enough for you to decide, like, is this for me? Do I want to expand? Do I want to go deep on this? Then you make that decision. But you can start there. If you already know this is for you, or like you want to, you're serious about having a very deliberate, concrete path and destination, which is what we offer, because we have a very clear destination. You know exactly what you're aiming for. It's not as if it's, it's like, yeah, get 1 million Instagram followers. And my question then is, to do what?
What's the next step? 1 million Instagram followers and money. Does it really work that way?
Yeah, what is the ultimate step?
Yeah.
Exactly. And with us, it's very clear. What you're after is your first commissioned project for a brand campaign, commercial, or a piece of content. It's very clear.
So you can say with confidence, the people who go through the masterclass are going to be able to have all the knowledge that they need to go out there and land their first commissioned piece if they put in the work.
I would say I probably shouldn't be the one saying it. So you can go to makingmusicforbrands.com, check out testimonials. And musicians are, I think by nature, we are very good at detecting false, superficial, or like forced things. Like we have good radars
BS
for
detectors.
Bullshit, I think. So you decide if the faces you're seeing there and what they're saying, you decide what you perceive. I mean, the thing is also there, you will see results of like students who didn't know anything about making music for brands, literally scoring campaigns for really big brands a few months after the masterclass. So your success really depends on a number of different factors. I have no idea if you're any good. How could I ever promise you any kind of traction in our business? But I can say this, if you do have musical skill, you're not lying to yourself about it. If you put in the work, if you send in the homework, if you make a point of being proactive and getting in touch with us, I put your chances very, very high that someday you're going to be the kind of person who emails me and says, Tommy, finally, I got it, man. I wanted to let you know that I got my first gig. And I get those emails every single week. I got my first gig. I just wanted to let you know I got my first gig. I want to thank you for, and that to me is like, hey man, this is why I did it, because I did 1,000 commercials over 15 years. Doing toilet paper commercials, it wasn't the only legacy I wanted to leave. I actually want to be responsible for some kind of tangible change to humanity in my own small way that I could affect. And this was it. I'm just going to teach a bunch of talented people how they can turn their talent into traction. And so, yeah, I want more success stories. I'm hungry for them. So, of course, I'm hungry to get as many people talented into the academy, and hopefully they will do what it takes to, to take charge of their career. We definitely do not leave them wondering. You have a very clear, focused path, step by step, hands-on. You're doing, you're not theorizing. You're sending in your homework. You're building your site. You're building your reel. And at the end of it, you have a directory of music houses that you're going to reach out to. There's not much more we can do for you, but we do. Once in a while, you get an email from the academy saying, we're working on a Nike campaign as a production company. If you want to pitch, it's open for you. Please send in your demo. And I can tell you that out of the last 7 campaigns that we've done, not 7, 5, I would say, every time it's like a student that comes through with a surprising demo and not a pro, which is very interesting.
Wonderful.
It's very interesting. You're welcome, guys. If you have any questions, I mean, we're also very responsive. Please reach out and ask, we're happy to, I would probably take the free training and then just so you have some ground things covered, and then ask your questions, because I bet they will probably be,
Sweet. We'll link to that down below in the show notes, and I'll see if I can get on screen here as well. Got the free training that's about 5 ways to make money making music with brands. Did I get that right?
Yep, it's 3 things. 5 ways of how to make money with brands, how music for brands is made, that's number 2, and how do you break into the business is number 3.
Gotcha. So the Broad Strokes free training is available. Link is down below. If you want to take the full entire course, that's available as well. Of course, there's actually a discount code that they're giving to SonicScoop readers. You can put in Justin500 and you can get either $500 off the full masterclass or 33% off the installment plan there. So type in Justin500 at checkout for the big discount on that. So definitely check it out. If this is something that you try, let us know how it goes for you. If you're on the YouTube version of this, go ahead and leave comments down below. If you've taken the free training or if you've gone through the academy, let us know how your experience has been with it. You can also email me anytime over at podcast@sonicscoop.com. Love to hear your feedback and how things like this are working out for you. Tommy, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks again, Tommy. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. This has been Justin Colletti of SonicScoop. See you next time.